Welcome back, and many thanks for staying with KTN News Sources Ladies' Night edition, of course. Let's move on now. And Bita MP Millie Odhiambo is on record for accusing Gatundu South MP Moses Kuria of trying to remove her underwear in Parliament. He responded by saying that he slapped her because she assaulted Joyce Laboso, who is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. Kuria dismissed allegations by Odhiambo, saying that she undressed herself and was screaming like a madwoman. So this is, all right, let's listen in. All right, we don't have that clip at the moment. So another case. I guess there's just too many of these things. What does that case, mean to you, that we use such terms as, even references like this, you want to cringe when you hear this happening in amongst honorable members.
Calling her mad woman.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a shame.
Right.
It's a shame. I mean, there's no other way to put
Right.
it. But I think if you read the undercurrent, the fact that when it was exposed, he tried to pin the blame back. There's a bit of shame, I think, that is beginning to creep in. People are beginning to understand that it's not business as usual.
Right.
That there's need for change, and there's pressure to, to create a different society. They may not do it spontaneously, they may need to be pushed. And that's why I keep saying we need to keep the pressure up, and we should never allow any incident to go by without.
But you feel like there's a wave of change building up.
I wouldn't call it a wave. Gentle baby steps.
Baby steps.
I disagree. I actually think that we're not making the required progress. And it's very worrying, particularly when that kind of behavior is coming from the leadership of the country. So you can imagine if the leadership is allowed to behave in such a manner, then what of the people? Because people will copy their leaders, and it becomes acceptable, for people to slap women about. Because as Rose is saying, he was justifying that why he did what he did. She was behaving like a mad woman, so I slapped her. So he argues that he was defending
another
the speaker,
woman. Yes.
You wonder why the Speaker of Parliament himself did not even penalize these members for behaving badly, because I remember that incident, it was the passage of the security laws.
Right.
And Parliament was just outrageous. And that is behavior that should be discouraged. Now, if this is how our parliamentarians engage when they disagree, what do we expect?
But do you think this is a space then for civic education? Because we need to be angry enough as, as a public, as an electorate, how do we start changing this fabric of our society? Do we need to create a movement? How do we go about this? I mean, it's a whole systemic change that needs to be going.
Kenyans love ceremony and sloganeering. They really love this. But let me say this. In the Constitution, Article 10, we have our national values and principles of governance that set our value system as a country. That is number one. Number two, we have laws.
Right.
We actually have laws. Now, the good thing about laws is that they come with penalties. When we begin to see people being punished or consequences to negative action, it begins to change. It makes people begin to think twice before they behave badly.
But if we have these laws, why are we not seeing people being punished, Rules?
Yeah, well, I think it's still the structures. The structures right down to the grassroots are still patriarchal. No matter how many laws you put on top of it.
Yes, the culture.
The culture, the practices, the whatever. We have to have a conscious re-education on a continuous basis of our society.
Yes.
And part of that is holding people to account,
Precisely.
It's holding people to account,
No matter who they are.
No matter who they are.
Right.
We saw a little bit of it with FGM, The minute you start to, actually throw people in jail, people pause and ask themselves questions.
Exactly.
There was a bit of backlash also, but at least it builds the consciousness.
Right.
But at the same time, it must be coupled with sensitivity to what's happening on the ground, sensitivity to how women are socialized. They're not going to stand up for themselves. I mean, those who are more exposed and aware and educated might be aware.
Right, but let me say something, please. you know, I really want us to stop letting the government off the hook so easy.
Right. I'm sorry,
and the
this is happening to
institutions
you again,
and
Daisy,
the institutions that are tasked. Remember with Kofi Olomide, the government moved in swiftly. Gender department issued a statement.
Yes.
The guy was deported and everything. Yet, with our own people, we let them get away with it. So what are we saying? Double standards, different strokes for different folks?
Right.
That's the question we need to ask.
Yeah.
It's true, but speaking about FGM and culture and tradition, there's one lady by the name of Winnie Byanyima, who is the head of Oxfam, has got a record as long as her arm, working in public service with the UN, doing all these glorious, marvelous things. And then we find out that her husband is opposition leader Kizza Besigye, and suddenly she has become, oh, you mean Besigye's wife? Just like we refer to governors' wives in the paper, you rarely see a governor's wife's name. You hear the governor's wife did this and that, or opened something or the other, kind of making women an accessory, a handbag to their husband, without an identity without the man in their life. So this could be cute. If you could find it cute and romantic, but then again,
or could it?
or perhaps it's just outdated, and it's time that we just finally just became Julie Masiga, Daisy Amdan, Rose, Sharon in our own right. Ladies, what do you take of that monologue?
It's part of the whole conversation again. You know, it's part of the whole trivializing of women and, you know, putting them in their place and discounting what they've done and what they've stood and what they've contributed. I mean, I think there's another example. Even when you read news reports, you'll find Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, and then you find Jane.
Jane Doe.
I mean, she's not even worthy of a title or
A
her
last
name
name.
or a last name, you know. So it's again, I think we have to make conscious efforts to really, really require that women's space is respected and protected. But it's not something that's going to happen with a drop of a hat.
Just seeing how it's going to happen, like in Rwanda. I don't
Daisy
know.
was saying something.
I've just kicked that point. Write it back into your mouth. Maybe you can talk about what you wanted to say first.
No. You know, the thing is, it really goes down to the system.
Right.
You know, because if you recall, not too long ago, I mean, as early as recently as the 80s, early 80s, 70s, women could not get a loan without permission from your husband or father, or really taking away the sense of personal agency of women. And that still happens even till today. Even the way we get our ID cards and the state literally assigns ethnicity to us. Because when you talk about Winnie Byanyima being, she's an aeronautical engineer, by the way, she was an elected member of parliament, not even on the women's seats. She was elected in a dual gender seat. So it goes back to that for you to be given value as a woman, there must be a man attached to you. That's why, even as a woman, when you're there talking, you find that a lot of the activism that we do, they begin to say, oh, those women who are not married, almost like marriage is an accomplishment. That it gives you, it's a validation, it gives you a sense of self-worth. And of course then, then you find, and the women, this has been inculcated into women, so that they even frown upon. When you listen to the campaigns that are meted out against women, oh, she's not married, if she's widowed, her husband is dead, as though you have anything to do with that, or you're barren, or you can't, those kind of things.
Just the other side of that coin, Daisy, is we tend to describe success even by women in masculine terms.
Remember? The media.
Like Martha
being the only man in
story, just being called the man in President Kibaki's cabinet. We now have Ambassador Amina Mohammed being called the same, now the man in Uhuru's, government. Is this, we have, I mean, it goes down to the socialization bit also, that we describe success in masculine terms.
No, but it's also because femininity, weakness is ascribed. Femininity is ascribed weakness.
Right.
The fairer sex, the weaker sex. So being feminine has a weakness to
you have,
it.
These women are
and
seen to have
power is seen in
overcome their
masculine terms, And so, you want something, as a leader, you are supposed to be powerful. That's why they go and they get all these council of elders to come and endorse them and make them the king of the tribe. Or, you'll never see.
Rose, is this something you feel like the women have to overcome your femininity to be seen as, a leader?
Why should we? I mean, why should we change who we are in order to occupy the space that given to us by God.
Right.
You know, it's not. We're not asking anybody. It's not a favor. It's a right. It's a right, and it's enshrined. Now we have it enshrined in the Constitution.
Right.
And I think we also need to begin to look at the benefits that are brought by women's leadership. It's very different from male leadership. You know, it is different.
Right.
And if you look at how women, even in Parliament, they are more compassionate. They deal with very practical issues. If you look at the laws sponsored by women, they generally answer a real requirement.
They're
on the ground.
solutions to problems generally.
Social
Absolutely.
issues,
Right.
socioeconomic
Social issues.
issues, yes.
The way they operate is very different. They'll operate across parties when men don't.
But then, Rose, you make a good point about women leadership because they call it soft skills,
Yes.
predictably. But now they say that men also have to have those soft skills, like emotional intelligence, etc., etc. But also women, we can be our own worst enemies. One quick example that comes to mind is the American election, because white educated women in their masses voted for Donald Trump. His campaign manager was a woman, and people might say, why are we supporting Donald Trump? Right back here at home, even the thought of a female president gives us shivers. We go into paroxysms of horror. So are we not supporting ourselves? Because even electing, we don't have one single elected female governor in this country. Not even one.
I think we're being a bit hard. And I think we shouldn't buy that. It's something that's sponsored by men. It's an outdated argument.
Philosophy, and
I think when you see a woman and a man, we do judge them based on skills. But how many women actually put themselves forward for presidential candidates? I think this country has had 3.
And in the 2013, it was only one.
And then
Wangari Maathai.
Did she at one point?
I think she did.
Wangari Maathai.
Well, either way, they're less than 5. You can count them
and
on
then
one hand.
the young woman.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so 4.
Yes.
In total, in 50 years of independence, we've had 4.
Could that be because we just know that we're just not going to get anywhere with it? Or should
There are so many hurdles to being. I mean, we go back to the institutional capture
Yes.
of structures by men. Land. You know, you need money. Access to financing, you know.
The political structures
The
are
political
male-dominated.
structures, the parties,
you know.
you know, all of
You
it.
probably need a husband as well, on that note.
all right, guys.
Even then, sometimes he'll be the one to oppose you.
Yes.
I'm sure we could talk about women and leadership issues for an entire day, an entire week actually. But we have to wrap the show now. We have come to the end of it. But thank you so much for joining us. But before we leave, I have our producer here, Becky, who has something nice that we want to. So it's Julie's birthday. And even as we go out, we shall be left here cutting the cake.
Thank you. Nice.
Wow,
So we'll be sharing this cake with our guests and, of course, all our team here. So happy birthday,
Happy
Julie.
birthday.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Fantastic. Yes, this is all the team news sources jobs. So I don't know if we have a knife so that we can cut it quickly. Okay, maybe we'll cut it later so that we'll share a bit of it with our panel and with our team. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. Thank you, Becky, for bringing this. And that's where we wind up this show tonight. What a way to celebrate a fellow woman on that show. So have a good night. That's where we wrap it up. And have a good night. We have KTN Prime coming up next with Sophia Wanuna. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.